Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 818 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And once again, Russia is burning, and also there are some nuclear drills going on as well. So it's good to see you once more.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine as massive things have been unfolding over the past 48 hours. We were able to confirm that the last Russian ship capable of carrying cruise missiles in the Black Sea Fleet was destroyed, and it has been confirmed. We are also able to hear that apparently the Russians are now finally conducting the tactical nuclear drills that we heard about several days or weeks ago, and we also have footage of that here on this channel as well. We were also able to get news that major Russian offensive in Kharkiv, Chasiv Yar, and in the area around Avdiivka have all once again run into large amounts of troubles and high amounts of casualties, and not only that, a major Russian headquarters used to coordinate all Russian forces within the areas of Donetsk and Luhansk has been hit by SCALP-EG missiles, leading to the complete destruction of the headquarters, really the Russian government's communication with forces in the field, and has also led to the wounding of a general that was inside of the headquarters when it was stricken. There is major news to cover, but still a load of it. And also, we have a few updates about the death of the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi. We really only have one, but we will be going over, I guess, a recap and kind of like a rounding out of that whole story that began when we were live on air on Sunday. But nevertheless, tonight is a one hell of a night, once again, of news. And I want to make sure to start us all off on a very good page, because we were able to get official confirmation from the Russian Federation's government that the destruction of the 22-800 project class Cyclone destroyer was a thing. It did happen, and this ship right here, it is actually this one, the Cyclone, was destroyed by Ukrainian ATACMS missiles. 2 of them hit the ship while it was at its moorings, and it sank where it was anchored. That is incredibly good news, as this is the last ship in the entire Black Sea fleet that can carry cruise missiles and launch them onto Ukrainian targets inside of the state of Ukraine. This means now that the Russian Black Sea Fleet has actually no means whatsoever of conducting missile strikes on Ukrainian targets inside of Ukraine or joining the Air Force and ground forces in launching their missiles against Ukrainian strategic infrastructure and strategic Ukrainian sites, as well as the civilians as well. This is huge news because it really means, for the large part, because the Russian Navy has really been completely inadequate or inactive in other realms of naval warfare, they are now completely deprived of the only mission that they would be conducting, which are long-range missile attacks against Ukraine. With the loss of this vessel, those attacks will never be happening again, at least for the remainder of this war, and it appears that the Black Sea Fleet is literally down and out for the count. It will not be conducting any major actions. If they do conduct any kind of major action, it most likely will be against maritime shipping trying to reach Odessa in Ukraine. But even still, we are highly doubting that they will carry through with that, considering that would put a lot of their ships in jeopardy of anti-ship battery fire, which would most likely be reaching and destroying those vessels. Also, some people have been saying... Oh, go ahead.
Also, real quick, I saw on this ship right here on the rear of it, it looks like they painted that back section of it. It used to be painted black. And I saw that John's being a live jet, so I guess the paint job didn't work. And I guess it didn't because it didn't really hide it that much because they ended up taking it down and turning it into a submarine. So it didn't work.
It didn't really work well at all. Actually, in fact, I think that this little camouflage pattern that they put on the ship was kind of a telltale sign of what would happen to it. Charred and smoky. I think that's what the Russians were looking for here, is to make the back section look like it was already pre-burned. Kind of like pre-roasted in a way. Kind of like an Enforcer LSA roast of coffee, which sadly will not be happening in the future due to low demand. But nevertheless, this ship is gone, and with it, the Russians' abilities at large to be able to conduct these kinds of attacks on Ukraine are pretty much completely non-existent. Also, some people are saying that Enforcer Mike's mat is low in volume. I've been hearing that as well. I thought it was just me, but I would have to say he does sound incredibly quiet tonight. Maybe the microphone isn't close enough to him, but nevertheless, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news inside of Sevastopol, and we're now going to be moving on up into the area of Moscow, where we were also able to hear some unbelievable major news that Ivan Popov, commander of the 58th Combined Arms Army in Ukraine, the largest combined arms army in the area, and not only that, the one that's holding the entirety of the Zaporizhzhia front, was arrested today on charges of state fraud or something along those lines. It was actually large-scale fraud, and here's a picture of our boy Popov, and it sounds as though Popov ain't going to be popping off no more, because he is apparently now under arrest. He's under arrest, according to the Russian government, for large-scale fraud, or suspicion of large-scale fraud, which is something quite interesting, because many of y'all may also know that the legacy of Ivan Popov is something that is a little bit interesting, a lot more interesting than what would meet the eye. Ivan Popov is the guy, well, he was actually the first guy in the Russian army to complain about the logistical structure and the communication structure of the Russian Federation. And that is something that is incredibly interesting. Let me take y'all back in time a little bit to talk about where Ivan Popov first said this and what may have led to him being arrested today. Back when the Ukrainians were conducting their June 2023 counteroffensive into the area of southern Ukraine near Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk, the Russians were conducting a defensive on the other end, and that was, of course, conducted in large part by the 58th Combined Arms Army. The 58th was run by Ivan Popov. He was the commander of the army, and one thing that he started to note is that the Russian Federation's logistical abilities behind the lines, and not only that, their chain of command and communication structure was completely archaic, and not only that, completely inadequate to the situation at hand. He openly complained about this, and this was before, by the way, the Wagner coup even happened, so he was kind of like the first tremors of dissent. We also covered that here on this channel back when it happened, but it was such a scathing statement that Ivan Popov made, and he also audio recorded it and sent it out to all of the troops under his command. He was then removed immediately by the Russian government as the general of the 58th Combined Arms Army and was replaced by someone else. That's someone else, sadly, I forgot the name of. They've largely been unimportant, and this area of the front has pretty much been inactive since the time of Ivan Popov being the commander of the unit, or really the army more so. So Ivan Popov kind of disappeared from the scenes and was kind of hanging out in Moscow, most likely in the Ministry of Defense, waiting for some kind of a reassignment or just working on some sort of a lower-end job for a officer of that rank. He was arrested today on charges of fraud, really. And that's something incredibly interesting because we've seen that the Russian purge, being orchestrated by Putin and the FSB, is starting to use the quote-unquote fraud charges as the biggest crux to be able to capture and get anyone they need and put them in prison. We've seen them pull this out now on 2 other generals and have them arrested and sentenced for supposed instances of fraud, and it appears that they're starting to go after everyone with that claim. A very interesting thing to note, and I think that it's certainly showing that the Russian Federation is still running through some massive tremors as far as the loyalty of the military is concerned with the central government, and the central government, led by Putin, is now attempting to purge any officers, whether they're competent or incompetent, due to questions of loyalty. That's even hit Sergei Shoigu, with Shoigu now being completely replaced as the Minister of Defense. And so, I would have to say, it does appear that Putin is moving in a very interesting direction, possibly to start purging all officials from the pre-war era and replace them with loyal yes-men. Even if they're incredibly incompetent, at least the central government will survive, which is, of course, the most important thing to Putin and the central government. But a lot of people have been weighing in on this, and this is something that we just asked y'all, but some people are wondering what happened with Ivan Popov. Why in the world would Ivan Popov be arrested like that? It makes absolutely no sense. And so a lot of people have been saying that Putin is just going to end up purging all officials, or that Popov must have done something that went against Putin, because very rarely do we ever see people getting arrested inside the Russian Federation, especially in the Russian Ministry of Defense, and usually it's because someone has gone against the grain. Usually when people get reassigned as well, that's the first part of removing them from the spotlight, so that way the Russian Federation can do whatever they want to these people without there being a lot of public outcry because they were a popular public figure. A lot of people have been talking about this, and a lot of people have many different ideas about what this really means, the arrest of Ivan Popov. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like about 48% of the people said Putin will purge all current officials along with Popov, and it looks like 39% said he must have gone against Putin, and 7% said, he's probably actually corrupt. And for me personally, I have no doubt that the guy probably is corrupt, but everybody in Russia is corrupt. So to specifically point this guy out and say he needs to be prosecuted while the main guy in charge, which is Putin, is the most corrupt of them all, is a little bit ironic. I would say that he probably did something against Putin at some point, which I think he has in the past, but more likely than not, I'm with the 49%. I think Putin is simply on a binge to purge all the current officials. He got rid of Shoigu, he got rid of the people under Shoigu, and now he's going after Popov. And for some reason, he has the guy coming back from Africa. I can't remember his name right now, but he's back from Africa. Yes, Surovikin. He's back there for some reason, and we still don't know why he's back. So something is clearly going on behind the scenes, and it's causing Putin to suddenly start purging a lot of the current officials. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, it does seem as though Putin is most likely purging all pre-war officials. That would be my take, because it seems as though, because of the Ukraine war and how massively underestimated the Ukrainian forces were by the Russians, people have to be blamed for this, and of course, Putin can never take the blame. So now there has to be an endless stream of pre-war officials that are going to be brought forward, drawn, and quartered because of that. Also, Matthew, I can't turn you up. There's no way to turn you up. I think you just have to move the microphone closer. But beyond that, I would have to say that it looks like he's purging all pre-war officials. But Matthew, do you have anything else to add to that as well?
I would just say I agree with that. But also, Enforcer, by the way, my gain is turned all the way up, and every single setting that I previously had is still turned on. So I'm not sure what's going on. Also, it's the same distance to my mouth as well. So Discord settings, all fine. So check and see on your end if it's something, because it's not on my end.
Hopefully this helps, but that might throw everything else off, because usually that's like a very balanced equilibrium in OBS, so we'll have to see if now anyone can hear me. But beyond that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least about the arrest of Ivan Popov. And with that, we're now going to be moving on down, well, actually up into the area of the Finnish Gulf, as this is something that we tried to report on tonight. Apparently it didn't hit the headline too well, But nevertheless, we did get to see that tonight, apparently, the Russians are becoming incredibly aggressive and taking actions that we have never really seen before, at least up until this point, because the Russians are becoming far more aggressive than they ever have, especially against NATO, as we have now heard that the Russian Federation has unilaterally decided to change its maritime borders with Lithuania and Finland and the Baltic Sea, and it does appear that this is a very escalatory measure. This is the new maritime boundary that has been created by the Russians and by the Russians themselves, now by the Russians and the Finns. This is something that they've done entirely on their own, and it is starting to show that the Russians are taking far more provocative action against NATO countries, considering that Estonia and NATO are both members of NATO. It's showing that the Russians are trying to provoke some kind of a conflict or escalate things with NATO to draw them to the negotiating table, one or the other. But this is still incredibly concerning to see, and we don't really know why in the world the Russians would make a move like this, considering, and this is something else that's kind of a little interesting to me, is that there is an international waters corridor through this area. There's really no reason to change the territorial water borders unless they're just trying to create border disputes to cause inevitable friction, which that's what it honestly seems to be as far as we can see right now, because there is no other good way to explain what's going on right here with this. But still, nevertheless, we are trying to look into this a little bit more and see about what more information we can find, but still a little bit of a concerning situation. Meanwhile, down in the area of Rostov-on-Don, we were also able to hear that the Russian Federation is conducting its nuclear missile drills. These nuclear missile drills are something that we've known about for a while and are testing the Russian nuclear forces' abilities to conduct tactical nuclear missile strikes onto targets that would be inside of Europe. And to cut that kind of short, what this is that this is supposed to be a tactical nuclear weapon strike against, say, the forces of NATO if there was to be a conventional war that broke out. But here's the video footage right here. You can see the Russian vehicles moving forward down the street. And let's see here. Let me turn this up really quickly. And we see the Russians making a whole big deal out of this. This is also, by the way, an Iskander-M, which I do want to remind y'all, it can actually use a tactical nuclear warhead. It can be nuclear ready. So when the Russians say that they're conducting nuclear drills, in reality, what they're doing is they're kind of going through their normal, I guess you could say, manual of arms. It's just that they are understanding that the end goal is that their conventional weapons would be mounted with tactical nuclear warheads and that they would be fired in that manner. But here's the clip. We now see them lifting the Iskander-M's into position. Unfortunately, I don't know what weapon system this is. It's just a toilet paper tube. And now we can see the convoy on the move again. We can now see them showing the preparation of a Tu-22 M3 backfire, a strategic bomber that would be used to carry tactical nuclear weapons such as cruise missiles to their drop zones and then fire them off from there. Much like we've seen them firing cruise missiles in the war in Ukraine. Also, I like, Matthew, how this one is like a show production because there's no other Tu-22 M3s nearby. It's just this one. And like everyone's almost like on a movie set around here doing their thing.
Yeah, it's like a perfect Home Depot set. They're working on the renovations to this ugly thing.
Yeah. We see them preparing a MiG-31K. Also,
that brother is trying to get eternal flight.
Hold up. So, wait a minute, hang on. I'm not really sure if this is supposed to be the pilot of the MiG-31K or if this is supposed to be just some ground crew guy preparing stuff, but I'd swear this guy looks like he's prepared to be in the infantry with a normal infantry helmet and a bulletproof vest. That's not usual pilot wear, so I'm assuming that this guy is a part of the ground crew, but really weird to show him instead of a pilot. Then we see them showing the security guy because we have to make it look like the Russians are actually well prepared. And
I don't understand why the security guys all have to wear masks, honestly. I've never understood that. It's like, if they're so tough, then why are they hiding their identity like they're scared?
Well, who knows? Like that is a good question. Maybe Matthew, maybe they just don't like the wind on their face. I have a feeling that's what it is. I'm sure they'd show their identity to everyone in the world, Matthew, because they're the brave, tough Russians, bleed. They're the bravest, the toughest, bleed. But still, it's interesting to see that the guy is wearing a mask, and it's a very bright green one. Like, it's not like the normal, like, dark green one. It's a very fluorescent green. But moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit down in the area of Chechnya, we were able to hear that Kadyrov's son has been appointed a minister. And, I gotta tell y'all something. This kid's going places. I'm telling y'all that. We have a picture of Kadyrov's son, and we were able to hear that he was appointed the Minister of Physical Culture and Sports. A very high up position in Chechnya, is the second highest to the actual president of Chechnya, which is Ramzan Kadyrov, because from what we understand, Ramzan Kadyrov is by far the best leader that there has ever been in the world, and we can see his son right here. And we were told that apparently this kid right here is being put in the position of the Minister of Physical Culture and Sports. We have tried to, on this channel, actually reach out to this guy right here and ask him, how in the world do you feel about getting the position? But all the guy would say in response to our question was, do the roar. And so we really didn't get a good answer out of him. But nevertheless, it does appear that nepotism is alive and well inside of Chechnya. And I have a feeling that the Minister for the Physical Culture and Sports, or really the department or the Ministry of Physical Culture and Sports, is probably going to be rapidly declining and falling downhill quicker than a stone. But that's only my assumption.
You remember how that other Kadyrov's son was out there trying to tell like 50 and 60-year-old men who's like lived a full life, telling them how to be real men at like 18 years old or something like that at 15. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, a good case.
Now they got this guy out here trying to tell athletes how to be real athletes, as the fella right here, not looking athletic, really.
Not really looking too athletic. He's about 2 stands away from working the hot dog stand, to be quite honest. But he's doing his thing, I guess, and nepotism is the biggest winning factor to getting a government position inside of Chechnya. Moving on from that, and on out of the Russian Federation for the large part of the moment, it's now time for us to move y'all on into the area of Ukraine. But before we do that, actually really quickly, I'm going to share this with y'all because a lot of people have been getting up in arms about this, and I'm just going to run this by y'all to see what y'all think about it. But apparently, the death of the Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi, has brought a lot of grieving around the world and a lot of condolences to be shed their way. We've heard that the European Union sent their condolences to Iran for the death of their president. We've also been able to hear that a load of people have sent their condolences, loads and loads of people, and numberless amount of people have sent their condolences to the the former president of Iran. And not only that, we got to see that the UN's headquarters in New York City today lowered their flag to half-mast in memory of Iran's president and the foreign minister, because they will sorely be missed. But one question I have, and this is something that I have seen, and this is where the controversy has come up, where was the flag at half-mast for all of the thousands of people that were put to death by Raisi's hands personally? Where in the world was the flag at half-mast for that? Or better yet, when was the flag at half-mast for all the victims of Iranian terrorism that have been conducted around the entirety of the Middle East since about the 1980s? Where in the world was the flag at half-mast for that? We didn't see it. And it's a little bit interesting to see that everyone has really sent their condolences to Iran for the death of what may as well be one of the largest leaders of a terrorist organization that we have seen at the moment. But still,
that's what I was saying on the night that we heard that he had died. I was shocked to see a lot of EU officials and also seeing our own government send condolences to Iran, to the butcher of Tehran. It's like, would they have sent condolences to Hitler if he had died? It sounds like they would have, based on the logic being used here. It's like, why are we like sending like, oh, we're sorry he died, to the people in Iran that were literally the victims of the guy? It's like they don't want condolences. They're out there firing fireworks because they're glad the guy's dead. It's like, it makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. And I gotta say, that as far as my position stands on this channel, and I'll just make this clear, very rarely do I weigh in unless if it's a pro-Western, anti-Western thing. This guy is a leader of an anti-Western country. He was the leader of a rival to the United States. And while you could send some respect some ways for people who die, like the United States send condolences for the death of Xi Jinping. I'm not a fan of the guy, but you could get it at least on a professional or formal level. But giving condolences to a country that does nothing but run terrorist organizations that attack the United States and our allies in the region, including Saudi Arabia and Israel, I don't really find there to be much condolences to be given, because it's not like the guy was a respectful president or a respectful leader. He was an underhanded leader of an underhanded country conducting crimes against humanity, and the guy is not at all someone who should be revered or someone who should be mourned when he has passed. It should be celebrated like the people in Tehran were when they were firing off fireworks once they heard about the official business of his death. That would be my opinion. Someone said, you're talking politics. I don't think it's talking politics to outright denounce a murderer and a maniac. I don't think that's a political thing to get to, because that would be like saying it's political for me to denounce Adolf Hitler because I might be pissing off the fascists. I'm okay with pissing off the fascists, and I'm quite okay with pissing off the communists. And I would have to say that what Iran falls under is a special kind of the best way I could explain it is Islamic fascism, and I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of thugs and dictatorships, and I'm not a big fan of people who cause crimes against humanity. Because you might say, like that person in the chat, you might say, oh, that sounds a little political. But I'll say this. No president in recent history or in former history in the United States has ended up killing thousands of people personally by hand by putting up 5-minute show trials and then having them marched directly 5 steps away and then shot in the back of the head. None of them have done that. So, I have a feeling that this kind of a statement would be undeserved in American politics, and also we do not touch on that kind of stuff at all here on this channel, no matter who it is or what they are or what you think about them. But I will say that denouncing a terrorist who was leading a country like Iran, I don't think that's a political thing by nature. Let me know in the chat if y'all think that's political or not, or whether y'all think that's just a common sense kind of a statement, because I would feel, me personally, it's more of a common sense statement than anything. But with that,
it's like also notice that when Osama bin Laden was taken out by the SEALs, nobody sent condolences to his family, and he was, in my opinion, almost equal to what this guy was in Iran here. The Iranian fellow, Raisi here, he had killed American soldiers by sending in his guys to go kill them. He had done that as well, same as Osama bin Laden had as well. But yet, for some reason, because this terrorist, Raisi, was the head of the state, we're going to make an exception for him and send him condolences. But yet, at the same time, the United States government literally dumped the body of Osama bin Laden in the ocean and sent no condolences. It makes no sense.
Dude, they threw Osama bin Laden out like he was a hamster that died. They almost threw him in the toilet and flushed him or something. It's like we had no respect for that guy, and I'm not going to have respect for a terrorist just because they have the title of president of a terroristic regime. That's not something I'm going to be doing on this channel either, in my honest opinion. And of course, I will say this. Seeing a lot of people in the chat saying, no, that's not political at all. That's just common sense. And I thank y'all for agreeing with that. And I see a few people saying it's political. Here's the thing, it's not domestic politics, it's foreign policy, it's diplomacy. And while you can kind of say that that's politics, that's not domestic politics, where we talk about stupid things that don't really affect anyone. This is a country that is an enemy of the United States. By nature, everyone should be against this country. I don't really think that's up for an opinion. That's just how things work. And that's also how the United States is always going to work. Because I haven't seen anyone who's led the United States, any president over the past 30 years, change their position on Iran a single time, no matter what side they're from, because they are an enemy of the state, and because of that reason, no one's going to be friendly to them or lean their direction. So I feel like that's not really a political thing to say that Iran is a bunch of, it was a group of bad people that are running a very questionable country. So the death of their president is nothing to be saddened about or nothing to send condolences for. And the United States government did send its condolences through the Department of State, but I found it very interesting that our wordage of condolences was more like a official slap on the face to the Iranians. They're like, we're sorry for the death of, the president of Iran, but we're also sorry for all the people who have been suffering under a dictatorial regime for decades at this point. And I was like, well, you know, I was like, no, I still wouldn't even give them the condolences. I just say we feel terribly sorry that it appears that many millions will continue to live under a dictatorial regime even with the death of this devil. That's what I would have put if I was in charge of the Department of State and had to send condolences. It would have more so been a declaration of pissing them off. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But moving on from that, we do have to circle back into the nuclear drills that the Russian Federation are conducting today. And a lot of people have been talking about it and giving their opinions. Some people are saying that they've been saber-rattling to the extreme. Some people have been saying that Russia is serious about nuking the West or using tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine or in an open engagement with NATO forces. A lot of people seem to say that it actually looks like a pretty desperate move by the Russians, like they're trying to force some sort of diplomatic concessions one way or another. But loads of people have weighed in on this. And Matthew, what are people saying and what are people thinking about this?
All right, so on the Russian tactical nuclear drills, which are currently underway, it looks like about 58% said Russia is saber-rattling to the extreme. It looks like 23% said it's simply a desperate move by Russia, and 13% said Russia is very serious about nuking the West. And on this one, I must say, to me, it seems like simple saber rattling. Once again, Russia does not have a lot of reliance on their traditional military power when it comes to fighting the West, because like Putin has said out of his own mouth, if it came down to a traditional war between Russia and also NATO, Russia would hands down lose that war. So they are completely relying on their nuclear deterrence to basically protect their sovereignty. And right now, they're really proving that by bringing out all the tactical nuclear weapons and conducting these drills. Of course, to me, that is insanity, because if your whole reliance is nuclear weapons to save your country, you apparently don't have a very good country, because you would have a good military. So that says a lot. But I'll be with the 58%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, they are saber-rattling to the extreme. I find it highly unlikely that they would ever use tactical nuclear weapons in any real situation, unless if it was a complete defeat for the Russian Federation on the battlefield. Then I could possibly see it. But nevertheless, I'm not really thinking that they would ever use tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. I find that highly unlikely, and I feel like the tactical nuclear drills are just an attempt to try and scare the West a little bit into thinking that they may possibly go through with something like that. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And of course, it is just an opinion, so you can be right and wrong, and it doesn't really matter, and you don't really have to get your feelings hurt. If I disagree with you, or if you disagree with me, my feelings aren't going to be hurt, because that's what this is at the end of the day. It's just asking folks what they think. But with that, it's now time for us to move on from that little bit of a question and on into Ukraine itself. And we were able to get some interesting news out of the northern Kharkiv area. It appears that over the past 48 hours, we haven't really seen a lot of changes or a lot of progress by the Russian Federation. I'll be showing you what has happened, but here it is. We can see right here that no man's land largely got filled in right here. We did cover that on, I believe it was Sunday. We covered that advance that was made here. And then over the next 48 hours, we can see that the Ukrainian positions have not changed. The Russians have now been reported to have advanced closer to Ukrainian lines in this area, but Ukrainian defensive positions have not moved, either on the western side of the Vovchansk front or on the eastern side, that much for that matter either. We have also seen that over in the area of Lukyansk, the front line has not moved at all. In fact, the Russians may even be contained in their small push out of Zelenskyy. It appears that they may even be pushed back across the border in this area, and beyond that, Russian forces have not advanced or made any major ground in either area. This is giving us a very, very clear indicator that this offensive has completely failed, and we are not expecting any major advances, any major breakthroughs, or anything along those lines going on through the remainder of this offensive campaign. This offensive campaign was supposed to be poised to be able to take the city of Kharkiv. That was clearly known since day one of the invasion by everyone. NATO, the analysts, us, everyone in the world, even the Russians knew that this offensive was aimed at trying to take Kharkiv and obliterate the Ukrainian rear lines in the northern area around Kupiansk. That has completely failed, and it appears that that's not going to be changing anytime soon. Of course, the Russians, out of rage, are now trying to make sure that they level the city of Vovchansk, so that way they can try and advance through it a little bit easier. You can see here in this just one picture alone, all of the buildings, like these right here, that have already been destroyed in bombardments by the Russians. And you can also see all the smoke plumes created by all of the brand new fresh rocket attacks that have been hitting the city and trying to knock out those forces that are inside of Vovchansk. Of course, it's most likely going to end up being unsuccessful. We could see a load of buildings, of course, ending up like they did in Mariupol, but we're still expecting that things are probably going to end up still boding poorly for the Russians in this area. Even if they level the city, the Ukrainians will still probably have a very dogged or very effective defense that will hold the Russians back. But still, it is showing that the Russians have run into very tough times, as we usually see that they resort to the scorched earth, kind of a level the city to the ground tactic, once their offensive completely burns out of any kind of energy and speed, and then it becomes a matter of raw firepower and massive casualties for the Russians to be able to make ground. And that's already what it turned into near to the Vovchansk area. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see some more pictures from Vovchansk showing some of the Ukrainian soldiers moving around the city and conducting the fight. This appears, I'm not going to lie, that actually looks like an AN-94, and I can't really tell for certain, but it would be really cool if it was an AN-94, I'm not going to lie. We can also see right here a couple of citizens on the ground. We can also see them passing by some more burning buildings. We can see some overturned cars. And we can also see that the aircraft monument in the city has already been destroyed by artillery fire. We can also see this bunny. We can also see some more burning buildings as well within the center of Vovchansk, as well as more destroyed residential areas. Of course, the Russians bombarding absolutely everything. And we can once again see the old picture that we saw in the past of the burning buildings throughout the entirety of Vovchansk, as Russia continues to try and bombard Vovchansk into complete submission, which most likely will not work, but nevertheless, the Russians will not stop trying. Meanwhile, over in the area around Lipsy, we were able to see that Ukrainian soldiers from the Siberian unit were starting to dig in as we could hear the sound of artillery in the distance.
Drone.
We hear the drone. And we see the Siberian battalion looking up into the air, trying to see what's going on up there.
Не дают покопать. Ой, это по пидору. Не-не.
And we hear a shell flying over and exploding.
Он по пидору выстрелил.
And with that, that's the end of the clip, but still giving us a little bit of a look at the Siberian battalion that's continuing to dig in this area and making sure to try and keep their heads low and make sure that Russian drones don't end up taking them off. Beyond that, it still seems as though this offensive area has completely come to a halt. The Ukrainian defensive is unbelievably successful beyond measure, and it appears that the Russians will be making very limited advances in the future, and if any advances are to be made, it will most likely be made at the cost of very high casualties. Moving on from that, we're now going to be moving into the area of our location unknowns, because we actually have a pretty interesting one right here. This Ukrainian guy on an ATV ended up driving by an unexploded bomb on the road, a smaller bomb, but he almost ran over it and it almost blew up on him, so he was very lucky, but here's the clip. And also I'm going to be muting that, but there's the bomb, right past it, oh my lord.
Oh my god, man, that was pure luck that you didn't hit that.
And he just keeps on going, but that's the end of that clip right there. But that was crazy, man. That guy must have seen his whole life flash before his eyes when he saw that thing. Because he did a double take. He did see it, 100%. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to hear of the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And the losses were actually pretty high. Dang!
Oh, dang, man. 1,380 troops and 6 Bobcats? I'm telling you what, man. Looks like the Ukrainians are out here slaughtering, basically.
Man, they are slaughtering. 1,380 Russian troops were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, an incredibly high figure, one of the higher ones of the war. 34 armored personnel carriers have been destroyed, along with 72 supply trucks, 15 main battle tanks, 42 artillery pieces, 54 drones, 1 MLRS, 2 cruise missiles were also shot down, along with 4 anti-aircraft warfare systems being obliterated, as well as 6 special equipment vehicles. The numbers have been incredibly good over the past week and a half. Now that the Russian offensive in Kharkiv has begun, the losses have been unbelievably high the entire time across the entirety of the war. And it is showing that, once again, that the Ukrainians are holding very effective defensive positions, and the Russians are running into these headlong and taking wildly high losses. Losses that we've very rarely ever seen before over the course of the entire war. But moving on from the Russian casualty report, it's now time for us to start moving on into the Ukrainian frontline news and go over each front and talk about what's been going on in each one, piece by piece. But before we get to that, we do have to make sure to talk about what the Russian saboteurs have been up to, because while we didn't put this down on the map, we did get to hear that Poland has arrested 9 more pro-Russians for organized terrorism. And a lot of people are wondering, are similar groups in all NATO countries trying to conduct forms of espionage, sabotage, or terrorism against each and every one of them? And a lot of people believe that the Russians have saboteurs literally everywhere. Some people say that it's only limited to certain nations in NATO, and some other people are saying that they're unsure and undecided for the large part. But a lot of people have had many different takes on this. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks almost unanimous. It looks like 87% said yes, Russia has saboteurs literally in every single NATO country. And it looks like only 5% said it's limited to certain nations. And on this, I must say, this is no longer a conspiracy theory. This has been proven now because Poland has now arrested at least 9 pro-Russians for organized terrorism, including arson as well as sabotaging various sites. And now Poland's even saying that the fire that broke out in the mall could have been actually done by one of these pro-Russians. So now that we're seeing all kinds of things breaking out all over the place, like for example in the UK, we see munition plants start going up in flames. And even here in the United States, we're seeing that as well. I would not be shocked if the Russians have people all over the world right now trying to damage and hurt NATO's infrastructure. That's not shocking at all. And now we have actual proof of it with Poland arresting these pro-Russians. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, the Russians do have saboteurs everywhere. And you know something that's a little interesting about that? A lot of people are saying that it's Russians, like watch out for Russians, like actual Russians in the West. You know what's a little bit more interesting about that, though, is that the pro-Russians are probably not Russians. They're probably Poles. They're probably Germans. They're probably French, British, and Americans as well that are acting on the behalf of the Russians. Because one thing that I've noticed, and this is something that has been very interesting to me over the period of the war, is that there are a lot of people who really don't seem to have a lot of national allegiance anymore in the West, and in fact revel in the idea of going against the nation they live in, or even working to its demise, which is something that I found very interesting, because it seems as though that's a more prevalent mindset now than it ever really has been in recent history. Not to say that it's never happened in history before. It has happened many times before in history. It's just that over the past, I'd say 70 years, this is probably the high time for really any country in the world to have a great espionage and terrorism ring in most foreign countries, well, in most Western countries, because there are so many people who hate their own country more than they hate the enemy, which is something I find really interesting, because both the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China seem to weigh in on that heavily here in the United States, at least in my own private observation. You can usually track the paper trails of most organizations that seem to have an activist movement to it, and I'm not saying one direction or another, I'm saying this equally. You can either trace the money trail back to the Russian Federation or the People's Republic of China. One thing that's really interesting, though, is that the People's Republic of China is a lot more open about the groups that they support, and tracking down the paper trails is actually a lot easier to them than it is to the Russians, but nevertheless, I think that this is something of concern. It is starting to show that the Russians would leverage these groups in Western countries to try and conduct some sorts of terrorism, or maybe even try and sway people's, I guess you could say, thinking to be more on a pro-Russian mindset or an anti-Western mindset. And I don't really know what these people want, like these people who are pro-Russians, because if you ever look at Russia, it is hell on earth. It is so much worse than any other Western country there is. Even the worst off Western country is still better off than Russia. And yet these people will sit there and have all of these lies sold to them, and you listen to them, and when you know what Russia's really like, it's all of these lies. Like one lie I hear the Russians always putting out is that they are incredibly against giving out free stuff, which is something that I always laugh at, because if you'll know anything about Russia, the modern Russian Federation inherited every single welfare state structure from the Soviet Union. So the same kind of pension systems and all that stuff that existed during the Soviet Union's time exists today, which makes Russia one of the biggest welfare states in the world. So it's like, how in the world are you selling this story to people like, are you the welfare state? Russia, big enemy of welfare state. It's like, you are the welfare state. It's like you were the first in the world. It's like, you can't even say this. Like, that gets me. Like not saying I'm like big into that or against that or anything, but it's still crazy to me that people will buy into that. And I guess it's because they know nothing about Russia, and Russia projects this image about themselves that is really completely different than the reality. But still, I find that absolutely bizarre. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And also, what are you thinking about it as well?
About the sabotage going on in Europe and also America?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I was right in the middle of talking to somebody.
Oh, got you. But with that, we'll let Matthew wrap up there for just a second, but still, nevertheless, I gotta say that it is something incredibly interesting to think about, and also I'm seeing a whole bunch of people in the live chat saying, I don't understand people's fascination with Russia. I don't really get it either, to be quite honest. I don't know what people find to be very interesting about the Russian Federation, because it is an incredibly mismanaged, very incompetent, and very dangerous place to live in. And I would have to say that in my honest opinion, I'm not really a big fan of something like that. And also I saw someone saying disagreeing with your government does not mean supporting an enemy. Usually in my experience, it kind of does, because nowadays people can't just go, I disagree with the government, but I love the nation. Now people nowadays have to go, I disagree with the government, therefore I must conduct treason against the nation if possible. I've seen that a lot, and I'm not saying that just out of the blue. I'm saying that because I talk to people, and they'll be like, I hate the U.S. government. I would let the Russians invade and take us over any day, which is pretty much admitting that if the Russians ever did anything against the United States, you would collaborate with the enemy, and you would conduct treason. So that would be my answer to that. But also, Matthew, circling back to you really quickly, what do you think about that? And what was everyone else thinking about that as well?
Okay, and are you referring to a poll or what?
Yeah, the poll about the 9 Polish, the pro-Russian spies that were arrested.
And on that one, I believe we've already covered it, hadn't we?
I wasn't entirely sure. That's why I was circling back to you, because I wasn't sure if we had covered that yet or not.
Yes, it's been covered.
All right, and so with that, sorry everyone, there was a whole bunch of stuff that started at the beginning of this stream, like thumbnail and title changes and stuff, that's kind of thrown me off, and also on top of that, I'm feeling really hot right now. I don't know if it's because the AC isn't on down here or something, but I'm like burning alive in this room, so I'm kind of a little distracted at the moment, but with that, it is now time for us to move on into the Frontline news. But before we get into that, we do have to answer a couple of questions from the chat, and then we're going to be getting right on into the Frontline news. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first question of the night is going to go to Steve T, who puts in a very generous $20 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for that very generous support. And he says, do you think corruption and firing these officials is a precursor to a lot more window falls? Or do you think these people will be left to talk and become a group?
That is a pretty good question. And one second, let me quickly read that, because I got to be honest with you, Matthew, you're still very quiet on my end, and I can not really hear you too well at all. And I've tried everything I can to fix that. But thank you so much for the support, Steve T. And I got to say that corruption is most likely a precursor for people getting thrown out of windows. I would actually believe that that would most likely be the case. And I think, let's see, I don't think they'll be left to become a group. I actually honestly think that they'll most likely get thrown out, thrown out of a window, because that's usually how things go in Russia. That's how we've seen it go in the past. So I don't really think, honestly, that's going to change all too much. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, to be entirely honest with y'all folks, I'm not feeling that great right now. I'm actually starting to break out in like massive sweats and everything. And also, I can't really hear Matthew either. And so it seems as though things are not really going that well tonight. So I think we're going to speed through the remainder of this news once we get through these questions, answer all the remaining super chats that we have, and then probably round out for the night. Because it just seems as though things are kind of falling apart right now at the moment. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I'm going to pull my mic even closer to see if that helps out as well.
That is helping out a great bit.
literally eat the mic this time, so let's see if that helps. But anyways, our second question here is going to go to The Planet is Dying, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Planet is Dying, for being very dramatic and supporting the channel. And they said, Slav Ukraine, and Hiram Slava, and take one from the chat.
And Slava Ukrainian, Ram Slava. And thank you so much for the support. And thank you, The Planet is Dying, for helping this channel to keep on running, because it is only folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. But thank you so much once again. The support means a lot, and it helps us to keep this thing running. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
So the one from the live chat is going to go to Jack Powelsinski. I believe is how I say the last name. And Jack says, can Russian submarines launch cruise missiles?
Russian submarines can launch cruise missiles. It's just that we very rarely ever seen them do that so far in the war. It's a very rare instance, and it appears that they usually like to keep their submarines held back so that way they don't risk losing them, as they are incredibly expensive and one of the few competent and modern weapon systems that the modern Russian Black Sea Fleet has. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well, and thank you so much once again, The Planet is Dying, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the remainder of the news.
And also, by the way, I saw AJ in the live chat say, y'all gotta stop drinking so much coffee. And unfortunately, I think that honestly might be what did it, because you said before that you drank a ton of coffee before the stream started this time. And I think that might be catching up to you, because the sweating and all that stuff you're talking about, that's like caffeine problems to my understanding. But anyways, moving into our next question here, we have one from Love Is Everything, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much for that support as well. They said, love to all on our 36th wedding anniversary, and take a question from the live chat, please. And also, happy anniversary to y'all as well.
And happy anniversary to y'all. I hope y'all are having a great one, and I hope that y'all are enjoying being here on the channel tonight with us as we're trying to cover this news as best as we can. And I hope that y'all are having an amazing 36th wedding anniversary, an incredibly long time to be married. And Matthew and me can only hope that when we get married, we're able to be married that long. That is absolutely incredible. And I hope that y'all have had an amazing marriage so far, and I hope y'all continue to have one well into the future. And we will make sure to take a question from the live chat. And thank you so much once again, Love Is Everything, for the support and helping this channel to be possible. Once again, I got to say this time and time again, if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality, and I got to thank y'all greatly once again for helping this thing to keep on rolling. And so with that, Matthew, what is the live chat?
All right, so the live chat question goes to WNNR 1957, who says, can a nuclear missile be intercepted? And if it was, would it detonate in the air? And what are your thoughts?
It depends on what kind of nuclear missile. If it's a short or intermediate range ballistic missile, those could be intercepted and destroyed. If it was a nuclear bomber carrying an actual nuclear bomb, like a gravity bomb, that could also be intercepted and shot down as well. So all of those ways can be shot down and intercepted. However, a intercontinental ballistic missile, the largest of its kind, cannot be intercepted due to the absolute speed of the warheads that would be re-entering the atmosphere. They're traveling at about Mach 23 when they re-enter the atmosphere, and almost travel Mach 23 all the way up to the point of impact in most instances. So it would be incredibly difficult to be able to try and create something that could shoot that down. So at the moment, we can shoot down every single kind of nuclear delivery system except for an intercontinental ballistic missile. That is the only one that we cannot shoot down at the moment. But I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into our next bits of news in the area of Crimea. And we were able to see that there was a decent amount of captured Russians here in this clip.
Спасибо второму батальону 4-й бригады «Рубеж» за то, что бодро нам дали пизды. Гой!
Еще раз!
Спасибо второму батальону 4-й бригады «Рубеж» за то, что бодро нам дали пизды. Гой!
And with that, that's the end of the clip. And also clarification, beating was not beating as in like beating them like with a stick. It's like beating them as in beating their military and forcing them into surrendering. Just want to make that quick clarification because that didn't come off that well without the context. But moving on from that and into Bilorivka, we also got to see that Ukrainian forces were under heavy barrage in this area as well.
Jeez, that's definitely a heavy barrage. Goodness.
Yeah, it was a wildly heavy barrage. The Russians have been bombarding Bilorivka heavily over the past few days because it appears that they're trying to take the village so that way the offensive across the river will be a little bit more successful, but I don't think that's really going to be happening all too well. And we can see the barrage still coming in. We can see TOS-1 thermobaric missiles exploding over here in this part of the clip. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. But very interesting to see the TOS-1 and the MLRSs bombarding Bilorivka. Meanwhile, moving on down into the area of Bakhmut, we were also able to see that the Russians attempted to take the town of Chasiv Yar. And we're going to be muting that because that is copyrighted. But we can see here the Russians attempting an advance onto the town.
Keyword attempting here.
Oh yeah, that's the key word because they don't make it, but they try. And we can see them here continuing to roll around. You see smoke covering some of the outskirts of Chasiv Yar, but we can already see that the enemy is beginning to retreat. The Russian forces are. And we now see a second assault moving in with a Tiger armored car leading the charge. And we now see one of the vehicles possibly getting hit right there by some kind of an explosive. And we now see another gas Tiger trying to move into the area, another gas armored car. And we now see them here showing another Tiger armored car getting hit and destroyed inside of one of the very outskirts of Chasiv Yar. And we now see that one of them was hit and destroyed with an AT-4 anti-tank weapon. And we can see this one's actually having a radiator issue, hence the white smoke. And it appears that it also just got knocked out right there along that road. But with that, that's the end of that clip and showing a failed Russian offensive through and through, once again by the Kraken unit. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we were also able to see that the Iranian International Legion was also trying to clear the outskirts of Chasiv Yar in this clip right here. And we're going to be muting that. And we can see here that they're about to hop out of the back of the vehicle.
This looks like a Ford truck or something like on the interior of it. It's kind of odd.
Kind
Is
of
this one of these armored vehicles that are from the United States? It kind of looks like it. I can't tell.
I couldn't really tell either, to be quite honest with you. And we can see them looking through a hole in the wall, and now we can see them getting up and getting ready to move down a small road. But I'll be honest with you, man, I don't know what it was, too much coffee or something, but I actually feel terrible right now. Like, I am over here in extremely profuse sweats. I'm burning hot. I got the fan almost up to max, and I'm still burning alive. So I don't know what it is, but we will have to make sure to just keep on trucking forward and trying to round this thing out as quickly as possible. Sorry about that, everyone. I would want to make sure.
Coffee. I can tell you that for a fact. That's definitely too much caffeine.
Yeah, but I don't want to be on. I don't want to be on air going through this for too long, to be quite honest. But still, nevertheless, sorry about that, everyone. We would run a full-length stream, but we are going to be trying to cut this down and annotate it a little bit because I'm not in the best of shape at the moment, to be entirely honest with y'all. But we now see the Ukrainians advancing onto the building in front of them, once again clearing out this very far outskirt of Chasiv Yar.
Do you want a water?
Nah, I'm good. I'm good. I'll power through. But we can see them continuing to fire on the building. And people are saying, gradually cut the caffeine. Y'all don't understand. If I didn't have that coffee, this show wouldn't run. I'd sound like Hot Dog Man if I didn't have coffee at this time of night. I would be on here. I'd be on here going, oh man, and then not talking for like 5 minutes at a time. I have to have the coffee to be able to keep going. It's just that sometimes I don't get to measure it too well, and I had to go to the backup jug of Stoke, so I don't really get to measure it out because the light where this fridge is non-existent. So I just kind of pour it into the cup and kind of eyeball it, which means that I got way too much because I eyeballed it and I didn't go with like the exact area of the cup that I usually fill it to for the perfect amount. So I drank too much of it. And now I'm suffering, I believe. That's my best theory as to what's going on with me right now. But yeah, I mean, sadly screwed up a little bit tonight. But hey, it was for y'all, and that's what counts.
And he also get water and make him drink it. Well, oh goodness. Well,
man,
we're gonna turn this. Well, I can't even say that on the stream. I was gonna make a joke, but I can't even say that. Enhanced interrogation streaming.
That gentle persuasion streaming. We see here they're moving up to the next building and continuing to clear it out.
Someone said you're talking like an addict.
Who, me?
Oh god, yeah, like a coffee addict. Oh, I was saying, no, it's not you. That's Hot Dog Man.
That's it. But he's not addicted to coffee. He's addicted to Peruvian blow. You know what I mean? Arr, that be some fine Peruvian blow. And we see them firing into the building. And we can see the fire is broken out in there as well. And with that, that is the end of that clip, but still very interesting to see. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that the Russians bombarded Chasiv Yar in this clip as well. And we see that it was very similar to what we saw up at Bielorivka, but in a brighter time of day, in the midday, for the most part. And we see the city here once again being barraged by the MLRS fire. And we can see here they're continuing to show the city and the damage that is sustained from the MLRS barrage. And that's the end of the clip, but still showing that fighting is ongoing at the moment for the control of Chasiv Yar, and it appears that the Ukrainians are still winning that fight. Meanwhile, we also got to see that a Tiger armored car apparently ran over a Russian mine. So a Russian armored car ran over a Russian mine and then blew up. So here's the clip.
Вот через час, что остался тигренок. Бага весь экипаж. Живой остался все 7 человек. Капот отлетел примерно метров на 10-15, он лежит целый. Вот яма из-под фугаса.
We see them continuing to show the burning Tiger right there, but once again showing the Russians screw up on their own for the large part. But moving on from that and out of that area, it's now time for us to move on into the area around Luhansk, where we got to see that apparently there was a little missile impact that occurred out in the area of Luhansk, right here in this clip.
В реальном времени. Что-то сбили, что-то прямо в Луганск прилетело.
And we see the smoke rising from the city in the distance, and we can also see another impact happen right there.
Что-то еще летит. Господи. ПВО работает. Где-то окраина Луганска. Собаки. Я думал, самолеты летят.
And we see the smoke continuing to rise from the explosions. And many would wonder, what are these explosions? What is causing these out in the area of this area of Luhansk? And from what we understand, the explosions were caused by SCALP-EG missiles hitting the headquarters of the Russian Federation's southern group. I will be getting y'all into this news right here. In this clip, we were able to hear that apparently, according to the Telegram post, let's see here, a building used as a command post for the Russian southern group of forces belonging to the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the LPR was struck by SCALP-EG missiles. Reportedly, 13 military personnel would have been killed and another 26 were wounded. Two unrelated sources also claim that the commander of the Southern Military District, Colonel General Gennady Anashkin, was wounded as well in the attack. And this is something that is huge, because we have not seen a major headquarters get hit like this in an incredibly long time. The fact that it was stricken at all is showing that, once again, Russian operational security is beginning to deteriorate, and once again, the Russians are taking very unnecessary risks, and also starting to pose more and more danger to their command staff. Moving on from that and down into the area of Avdiivka, we were able to also see an M1A1 Abrams that had been outfitted with Contact 1 ERA, which is very nice to see and great to know that the Ukrainians are still using these out there on the battlefield. Moving on from that little bit of news up in Avdiivka and down into the area of Krasnoyarivka, we were also able to see a Ukrainian forward air controller and an Mi-8 flying behind him. This is a pretty interesting little bit right here, and also quickly, Matthew's coming in, the Uber Eats fella. Thank you so much.
I went to the cooler and grabbed the water.
Wait a minute, is it actually cold?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, it's actually cold. I rarely ever get cold water. This is a blessing. I thank the great leader for providing me with the cold water, and we're going to be waiting for Matthew to return back to his microphone in a minute, but a huge shout out to Enforcer Matt, who just went off air and got me some very cold water, so I'm going to be trying to drink this like Mark Zuckerberg at the congressional hearings.
Just a quick trip to the cooler.
And thank you so much. Thank you. It actually does help a good bit. But still, we can see the Ukrainian forward air controller right here with an Mi-8 flying around in the background. Just a really cool picture. Pick goes hard. Feel free to screenshot. Moving on from that and into our next bit of news down in the area of Marinka, we were also able to see that a Russian tank got hit. And this was one of the weirdest tanks I ever seen. It looks like the wall, which we showed you all a while ago, and it looks like it just got schmacked. So here's the clip. And we see the drone coming in. And we see another drone coming in and hitting dead on to the vehicle once more. And we now see them hitting it again. When you see that they keep on blowing off ERA tiles, and it is nice to know that they're going to make sure to knock out this Russian hulls, even if it is well armored or somewhat better protected, I guess. And now that I got all that water down, that's the end of that clip, and it is nice to see that they were able to try and knock out another Russian vehicle in the area of Marinka. Meanwhile, moving further on down the lines and into Kharkiv, we also got to see a clip of a Panzerhaubitze 2000 firing in the area. And this one is a part of the 503rd Motorized Brigade. And it is nice to see that the massive and beautiful Panzerhaubitze 2000 of the German army is still in operation with Ukrainian forces. And we can see it here in this clip doing its thing. And I mean, it's keeping up a pretty consistent rate of fire as well. And thank you, everyone, for the kind words as well and all the care that y'all been throwing out in the live chat. I have been seeing it. It's just, to be honest, for some reason, I guess it's the coffee. I'm so over-caffeinated. I'm kind of spaced out at the moment. I'm hardly even able to concentrate on getting through the news and creating a good monologue. We will remember this in the future, and I'm going to come up with an actual system of measurement. It's going to be an enforcer-style measurement system of what is the right amount of coffee, what is too little, and what is too much. Because today, it was just simply too much. But moving on from that and down into the area of Kherson, we also got to see that Russian soldiers were using decoys in the area, which is something very interesting to note. Thank you so much. And it shows that the Russian Federation is trying to draw in drone forces to hit decoys of Russian soldiers that are in the area but they aren't really. And we can see a whole bunch of them right here. Very interesting to see. And once again showing the Russians are getting a little bit crafty and trying to draw away Ukrainian drones from hitting real soldiers and instead hitting the fake ones that you see right here. Moving on from that and across the river, we also got to see that an OSA fired at a Russian drone just today. And here's the clip from inside the OSA.
Була розрахунок пуск по другому каналу.
Є сход по другому каналу.
Захват, третій луч,
Now we see the missile's been fired.
Є подрив.
They hit it dead on. Bada boom, jagga jagga, bada boom, jagga jagga. But with that is the end of the clip. Nice to see and wonderful to know that OSA was able to knock that air system out. Meanwhile, inside of the area around the Kimber and Spit, we were also able to see a Ukrainian missile boat in action here. We see the little Ukrainian missile boat right down there. And it's about to fire. This is the first time we've ever seen this in the course of the entire war. And there goes all of the MLRS rockets.
This is Beyond the Frogs. Or Fogs. This is Fogs.
Beyond the
I said
freaking frogs. I'm telling you, King Charles, he's the heir apparent to Count Dracula. He lived in Count Dracula's castle. It's like, nah. It's like, nah, sorry. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Very interesting to see, and nice to know the Ukrainians are getting a little crafty out there. Also, once again, to back this up, we have heard that the Project 22-800 class Cyclone was destroyed. We did cover that at the beginning of the stream, but I want to make sure to go and double tap that to make sure that you all know that it did happen, and that the Russians are crying about that. And so with that, it's now time for us to move up to Kyiv to show you all the air defense report, which we were able to see right here. 28 Shahed 136s were destroyed, which is an incredibly good air defense report if I've seen one. And now, without further ado, it's time for us to move on to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 818 of the war in Ukraine. And so, without further ado, here is the speech.
Speech.
І українці, українки. Сьогодні продовжив дипломатичний марафон підготовки глобального саміту миру, зустрічі багатьох лідерів заради реалізації формули миру, яка може примусити Росію до справедливого миру. Говорив сьогодні з лідерами Румунії, Анголи, Іраку, запросив їх на саміт та поінформував про ту роботу, яка вже зроблена і для організації саміту, і для його результативності. Статут ООН об'єднує всі нації, всі держави однаково зацікавлені в тому, щоб цілі та принципи статуту ООН були дійсно робочим інструментом підтримання миру. Щоб це було дієвим. Окрім того, з президентом Румунії ми обговорили нашу взаємодію заради безпеки, заради стабільності в нашому регіоні та в усій Європі. Зокрема, оборонну співпрацю України та Румунії. Подякував за підготовку нового оборонного пакета для наших воїнів. З президентом Анголи ми обговорили можливості нашої двосторонньої співпраці. Я запросив пана президента відвідати Україну. З прем'єр-міністром Іраку теж говорили про відносини між нашими державами, про спільну нашу потребу в максимальній стабільності ситуації в світі. Дуже важливо, зокрема, те, що працює наш експортний морський коридор. І українське продовольство досягає світового ринку та не допускає фатальних дефіцитів. Це додає стабільності, зокрема, і регіону Затоки, і багатьом іншим частинам світу. Цю нашу роботу ми будемо продовжувати, збільшуючи, наскільки це можливо в умовах повномасштабної терористичної загрози Росії. Наш український внесок у світову продовольчу безпеку. І це також наша власна економічна безпека, український експорт, українські доходи, українські робочі місця в багатьох галузях. Також сьогодні я говорив з президентом Азербайджану про енергетичну ситуацію в нашій країні, про співпрацю між нашими державами в цьому напрямку. Зустрівся сьогодні з міністром закордонних справ Німеччини, подякував за всю надану підтримку Німеччина – один із найбільш вагомих наших партнерів. Ми обговорили і подальшу спільну роботу як в безпековій, так і в політичній площині, і в європейській нашій інтеграції. Я вдячний Німеччині за розуміння того, як важливо, щоб вже у червні у нас був реальний результат, фактичний початок перемовин щодо вступу України в Євросоюз. Все зараз максимально поєднано. І безпекові питання, і наші оборонні можливості не тільки України, але й усієї Європи, і дипломатична робота, і економічна стійкість України. Кожен новий зв'язок України зі світом, кожен посилена комунікація та співпраця – це для нас усіх додаткові можливості забезпечувати захист життя наших людей, наших міст, громад, забезпечувати силу нашої армії та наближати реальний мир. Сьогодні були детальні доповіді щодо ситуації на фронті та у забезпеченні оборони від міністра оборони України Умєрова та начальника Генштабу Баргилевича. Доповідав і головком Сирський. Відбулось напередодні чергове засідання формату «Рамштайн». Сьогодні доповіли щодо роботи по наших потребах. Передусім це ППО, броньована техніка, снаряди. Всі партнери повністю поінформовані щодо актуальності потреб та реальної фронтової ситуації. Вдячний кожній державі, кожному лідеру, усім міністрам оборони партнерів та начальникам штабів партнерів, які дійсно готові допомагати і реалізують обіцянки, які звучать. Весь зміст комунікації з партнерами має відображатись змістом реальної бойової роботи наших воїнів, тими засобами ураження, які потрібні на передовій і зараз, цими тижнями, а не десь влітку. Покровський напрямок та інші Донецькі напрямки, Краматорський, Урахівський зараз залишаються надзвичайно складними, і там найбільше бої. Харківщина, наші сили знищують окупанта, результати відчутні. Я дякую усім нашим воїнам за влучність, за стійкість, дякую усім, хто б'ється та працює заради нашої держави і людей. Дякую усім, хто розвиває наші українські, зокрема, оборонні можливості. Сьогодні мав нагоду зустрітися з нашими молодими науковцями, які працюють в різних галузях, а також із зовсім юними науковцями, які поки планують почати кар'єри, планують саме в Україні. І це важливо. Дякую всім, хто з Україною. Слава Україні! Дорогі українці!
What the hell? It repeated. But anyways, with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 818 of the war. And that moves us on into the second segment, where we get to talk about whatever we want to talk about, including all of y'all. Y'all get to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Of course, pertaining to channel rules. But still, beyond that, I got to say, while we are going to be rounding out this stream a little early, I'm hoping on rounding this thing out by the top of the hour or a little bit before. I do want to say that it is, I'm terribly sorry once again about this. I have drank loads of water. I've actually had 2 cups of water brought to me. First one was by Matthew. Second one was by Mama Enforcer. Huge shout out to Mama Enforcer. Always looking out, being a real one. But still, I feel like garbage. I'm actually not sure if it is a caffeine deal or if it is something else entirely. I have no idea. But we will be making sure to give y'all a good show as best I can. Of course, it's going to be a little bit shorter than it normally will be, but still, y'all are absolutely incredible folks. We would do anything behind the scenes for all of y'all, and even if it means going through dying sweats and chills pretty much over here to get through this show and get to talk to all of y'all, that is something I will do, because y'all are what make this show so worthwhile to run, so worthwhile to get out the news, is for all of y'all. And I got to thank y'all all once again for being here with us tonight and bearing with it, and thank y'all all once again for just being longtime members of the Lee Spring Army and always having the best in mind for Ukraine, the Western sphere around the world, and also for the Lee Spring Army and me and Enforcer Matt. We are greatly appreciative of that. But with that, Matthew, take it away.
All right. And also, Enforcer, you didn't happen to touch my Fallout shelter sign, did you?
No, I touched the Iranian playground set you got.
Oh yeah, that could be it as well. That could have done it.
Nah. Who the hell ever got hurt by a little bit of radiation, Matthew? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Man, I wish I had a Geiger counter though, like a legit one. Like we have one Geiger counter, but it's a little bit along the lines of Alibaba, which it takes it like a full hour to get an accurate reading. But I've been wondering, I've gotten a Fallout shelter sign, like the legit type. It shouldn't have been in contact with radiation, but I'm beginning to wonder. Like I might want to like scan that thing with a Geiger counter or something. But anyways, jumping into our first super chat question here, we have one from Toadman the First, who threw in his first ever super chat of the stream and threw in a $50 donation. A huge shout out to you, Toadman, for that support. They said, "Slav Ukraine." And a quick question: based on all the news you've researched, what's your best educated guess on how much longer the Russians can continue their invasion at the rate of equipment loss and troop loss?
Great question, Toadman the First, and thank you for your first super chat ever. It's actually the biggest one of the night, and we are greatly appreciative for that because it helps this channel to keep on running. And while I'm not feeling that hot tonight, we still thank you so much because this show wouldn't be possible at all if it wasn't for folks like you who enjoyed it enough to support it. And to answer your question, and it's actually not a quick question. It's actually a pretty in-depth question because there's multiple things that you can go through, different kinds of vital metrics needed to continue a war. And if all of those are in stable condition, you could keep a war going indefinitely. But the thing is that with wars, there is no such thing as one going on indefinitely, and there's no such thing as any one of those vital categories always remaining stable. One of them will eventually run out and hit rock bottom, and it only takes one category to hit rock bottom for a war to end. And there are several that, just to summarize them all, are mostly going to be coming to an head by the end of this year or by the beginning of next year. As far as we understand, Russian manpower losses will never hit rock bottom over the course of this war. They have taken incredibly high casualties, but the reality is that there's such a large pool of able-bodied men to pull from in Russia, if you want to call alcoholics able-bodied, you know, like severely critically alcoholics who are like dropping dead from alcoholism kind of alcoholics. You could kind of stretch that definition, but they'll never run out of those over the course of the war. So we have to move on to other things. Will the Russian government run out of money? The Russian government appears that it is starting to run out of money. There are some very big indicators out there, for example, banks collapsing and the Russian government not bailing them out, as well as major Russian oil companies like Gazprom's oil division. I believe it was Geo-Russia or something like that. It collapsed and it did not get bailed out either. We've also been hearing that infrastructure is starting to crumble around Russia in higher rates than normal. It's about a 10 to 15% increase than normal due to a lack of Russian government funding, which is once again starting to show that they are running out of money. So we are assuming that the Russian government may run out of money by the middle part of next year, which is really one of the longest ones that we would expect at the moment. However, in terms of armored vehicles, at the current rate of losses, we are assuming that they're most likely going to run out of a large enough amount of armored vehicles to keep their armed forces running by the end of this year, just because of the losses. And some people have actually been able to do the math, and it appears that the supply yards just can no longer keep up the kind of consumption that the Russian army is at the moment. And if the Russians continue on the war the way they have been, they will probably run out of really every single kind of armored vehicle, armored personnel carrier, tank that you can imagine, and they'll be down to being a almost completely defensive force with no real armor to back up offensive actions, meaning that at that point the war is over for them and the ball will permanently be in Ukraine's court to turn the war around and eventually slowly push the Russians out. Another one that appears to be probably the most important one and crucial one at the moment is the lack of any kind of Russian ability to produce enough oil to keep stable. That is probably the one that we'll see becomes the most important going in the future, because Ukraine has destroyed about 15% of Russia's oil refining abilities. And while that doesn't sound large, you have to remember that at 100% of Russia's oil refining abilities, they still have to import gas products from outside of Russia. So going off of that, with them now at a 15% deficit on domestic production, they are bleeding hundreds of thousands of barrels of refined fuel products per day. And while a lot of people will say, and this is always something Toad Man the First that you'll hear out there that is a fallacy, a lot of people go, the Russians are one of the largest oil producing countries in the world. But a lot of people don't understand that it isn't oil production that counts, it's refining production that counts, because the crude oil is sucked out of the ground, and crude oil is practically unusable. It has to be refined into something more fine, I guess is the best way to put it, for it to be used. For example, gasoline is an incredibly refined fuel product, and diesel is an incredibly refined fuel product as well, along with jet fuel and a whole bunch of others. It takes a decent amount of refining to do any of that. And considering that the Russians may produce a lot of oil, but they have no way to really refine that into anything usable, we are believing that the strategic oil reserves will most likely run out by the end of this year. And that is really the biggest of the vital factors that we're seeing that is showing that things can't last much longer, and it most likely will come to a head by the end of this year or the very beginning of next year. That's at least what we're assuming here on this channel. We could end up being wrong, because crystal balling like that is incredibly difficult, and things could change behind the scenes that we cannot factor for or account for that will extend the war even further. But we believe by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, this war will be over. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in all three of those categories, the best I can, Toad Man the First. And thank you for your massive support, and thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. Slava Ukraini! And thank you once again for support. Thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is gonna go to Andy L, who put in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Andy, as always, for the generous support. And he says, "Here's some money to go get him some water," and then take a question from the live chat. And Andy L, he paid $20 to get the Enforcer some emergency water rations. Thank you very much, Andy, for the support. All jokes aside, and also, Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for giving me that Fiji water, Andy L. I'm greatly appreciative. Sign the contract, but beyond that, thank you so much, Andy L, for the support, and thank you for wanting me to get water. I literally saw the entire live chat blowing up for like 5 minutes saying, "Get him water! Get him water!" Like I'm on fire or something. It was like, "Get water, quick!" And I got a lot of water, and now I'm drinking on a body armor. So a peach mango body armor, by the way, in case if anyone was wondering. So hopefully that will fix the issue. But my goodness gracious, I haven't felt this bad in a while. I'm not sure if it's because of the coffee or something else, because it may be something else. I'm not entirely sure. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support, Andy L. And we will make sure to get one from the live chat. But thank you for being a legend. Thank you for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running, because folks like you, once again, do help to make this thing possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so, Matthew, what do we got for a live chat?
And the live chat question is going to go to, let's see here, Leon's Pierre, who says, any thoughts on Russia deciding to redraw their territorial waters with Lithuania and also Finland, and even though these said waters belong to those nations?
Yes, this is an act of aggression against NATO countries and their territorial waters that have been agreed upon by a treaty. It is an absolute violation of international law, and not only that, a breach of NATO's sovereignty over these waters. For that reason, I would consider the situation to be quite severe. I would move NATO naval assets into the region to protect our original borders as agreed upon by a treaty, and if any Russian vessels were to enter these waters in an attempt to impose some sort of Russian jurisdiction, those vessels should be escorted out of NATO waters, and if they refuse to be escorted out of NATO waters, they will be fired on. That would be my stance at the moment about what has happened up in this region. It is wildly escalatory, and not only that, it breaches the sovereignty of Estonia and Finland, both NATO countries, and for that reason, they are owed the same kind of response that would be given to any other NATO country if their waters were violated in this manner, which is armed defense of these waters. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again, Andy L, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel keep on running. Because folks like you make this thing possible. And I can't say that enough. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Pedro Martins Costa, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Pedro, as well. He said, will this escalate to World War III, in your opinion? And greetings all the way from Brazil, and Slava Ukraine, and Slava LSA.
And greetings to Brazil. Really cool that you're all the way from Brazil. Really cool place. It's actually, I believe, the only country in South America that speaks Portuguese as its official language, which is always incredibly cool. Like, isn't that just a cool fact? I think it's a cool fact. And I don't, and to answer your question, Pedro, I don't think this is going to necessarily escalate into World War III, at least a war in Ukraine. It appears that that is being so contained, really, by both sides. Although the Russians do conduct provocative actions like what they're doing in the Gulf of Finland right now and conducting tactical nuclear drills, it seems as though both sides are fairly well set on trying to contain it inside of Ukraine. So I have a feeling, I have some kind of a reason to believe that this will not expand into being World War III, luckily. So most of us won't have to get involved in this conflict directly. It will be fought and won on the fields of Ukraine and will not have to be fought and won over the rest of the fields of Europe. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, but still, really cool to know that you're from Brazil. I think that's incredibly neat. And thank you so much for once again being here on the stream tonight and enjoying it, and also supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. And so, of course, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, Matthew, we're on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Cody Wilson, who put in a $10 donation and without a comment, but thank you very much, Cody, for that support. And we also had a $5 from Robert Johnson and also Certify as well, also without comments. But thank you very much, Cody, Robert, and Certify for helping to support the channel and keep our work running, because like the Enforcer says, it is the viewers that crowdfund the whole operation and make the whole thing possible. We appreciate it very much. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank the three of y'all as well for the support. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but y'all's support is incredible. It is massive, and it helps this channel to keep on running. The only way we get to do this as a job is through really just viewers like y'all enjoying this channel and deciding that it's worthwhile to support. We don't run any ads on these live streams. We don't run any sponsors. The stream runs absolutely free. We don't make a cent if it wasn't for y'all. And I got to thank y'all greatly once again for enjoying this channel enough to support it and find it worthwhile to support, because y'all help to make this channel a reality day in and day out. And so with that, thank y'all. All three of y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Lord Lathos LSA, who puts in a 10 and says, Lady Lathos and I need your vote. And also, let's see here. He mentions a particular president. It's a pretty recent one, actually. Believe it or not, it's actually somewhat recent. I don't know if I can read this off, but Enforcer, are you okay with Lord Lathos' super chat?
1 second, let me make sure to find it and read it. For some reason, it's not showing up on my spreadsheet, which is... Oh, wait, hang on. Let's see.
Hello, Nancy.
Wait, wait. I found it. Let's see. I'm not really sure if we can read that one off, because technically, Lord Lathos, our no politics rule kicks in after the Eisenhower administration from 1960 onwards. So any specific mention of any president beyond that point, or domestic political issues beyond that point, are usually so recent and so modern that it is divisive to bring up and starts causing brawls in the chat. So usually we try and avoid that. But considering that it is more of a historical question, I'm going to let this one slide, and I will answer it, and we will read it off. And so, Matthew, take it away.
Lord Lathos says, Lady Lathos and I need your vote. Didn't Reagan support Iran with weapons? For example, Iran and Contra, or something or other.
And let me make sure that I'm getting this correct, because if I remember correctly, that is the way it went. So let's see here. Let's see. So yes, that is correct. We did sell weapons to the Islamic Republic of Iran during that time. So I'll answer this from a historical perspective. I'm not going to say whether anything that happened with us was good, bad, or anything in between. So y'all are not going to hear a biased take on this. It's just going to be exactly what happened from what we understand. The president at the time decided that it was important that we continue to support anti-communist forces within the area of Central America and northern South America, and so we decided that we needed to try and find some way to fund these groups that wasn't going to be official, so that way there wasn't a paper trail leading directly back to the United States. So we decided that the best thing to do was to get a guy called Colonel Oliver North to conduct a arms dealing with the Islamic Republic of Iran, where we would secretly sell them unofficially weapons, and then the Iranians would give us money for those weapons, and then we would use that money that we got from the Iranian weapons sales to then fund the Contras that were inside of Central and South America. Funnily enough, what's interesting about that is that the Contras later turned on into the full-blown cartel, and that's why we have a massive cartel issue at this time, is because of the funding that they got then. But that's kind of how everything turns out. You usually end up supporting a group to achieve a cause, and then they end up turning into a monster later, kind of like the Taliban is the exact same. We actually supported the predecessor to the Taliban, the Mujahideen, and we supported them inside of Afghanistan during the Soviet-Afghan War, and then later on they grew up to be a monster, and they grew up to fund and support a whole bunch of terrorist regimes in the region, and then possibly allowed Osama bin Laden to stay in Afghanistan for a while, long enough that we decided to invade Afghanistan, or at least use it as a good explanation to invade Afghanistan. But yes, that is correct. That did happen during President Reagan's time. So that is something that did occur, and I hope that does answer that the best I can, Lord Lathos, LSA. But we did sell weapons to him. But it wasn't, like, as far as over the period of time, I will be quite honest, it wasn't an incredibly large amount of weapons, especially considering that we're talking about these weapons were sold to the Iranians in the late 80s, which is about 40 years ago. And nowadays, they've probably either exhausted those weapons or they are well past their service life. That's kind of the best thing to answer. The best thing to answer to that. But nevertheless, it is something true. If that's what you're asking, is that historically true? Yes, that is completely true, and that's how that whole entire system worked. I wish we could talk about things like that a little bit more. At least not on like a biased level. And I hope, let me know in the chat, folks, was that unbiased sounding? Because I wanted it to sound as unbiased as possible, giving the lay of the land with that. Because while it is a question about something that occurred in modern political times, past the 1960s, at the exact same time, it was more of a historical question, so we could kind of answer it. So let me know if y'all found that interesting or not, because a lot of modern U.S. presidential dealings, getting past the no politics rule and just speaking about it in a broad umbrella sense, is actually quite interesting, because a lot has happened since the 1960s that, you know, we don't really have to say it was a good or a bad thing. We can just talk about it and, you know, say what happened. It's all really interesting. It's just that we can't really cover it much because some people, some people find things to be just very upsetting or riles them up for really no reason. You know, you just bring up the topic and then people will get angry. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And thank you, Lord Lathos, LSA, once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Indeed. And our next one is going to go to JMP Traveler, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, JMP, for that support. He says, I think Enforcer Mom needs a cup of her fave beverage. Shout out to all the moms out there, and roll tide.
And roll tide roll. And thank you so much, JMP Traveler, for your third super chat in the history of this channel. And thank you for giving a shout out to Mama Enforcer, who is an amazing mama. We love Mama Enforcer in this household. And she was absolutely incredible, bringing me a second cup of water and also a peach mango body armor to try and help me out with whatever's going on right now. That was incredibly kind of her, and I can't thank her enough. And also, let me think. I don't really know what my mom's favorite drink is. I would say that it's most likely water. We are a very bland household when it comes to drinking anything. It's mostly, for me, I'll let Matthew answer in a second, but for me, it's mostly water, milk, and sweet tea. That's kind of like the holy trinity of like the kind of liquids that I drink. But Matthew, what would be your version of the holy trinity of drinks?
Let's see. Just 3 of them?
Yeah, 3 of them, or you could go with however many you want.
I honestly, I do orange juice, apple juice, sweet tea, the Milo's variety, the only variety that there is. Then I go with the body armor. Then I go with, let's see here, what's the other one? Damn, I can't really think of the other one. There's that grape juice stuff, that 100% white grape juice, pretty good stuff. And also, beside that, really nothing else. That's pretty much it.
And so with that,
Also, a little bit of espresso. I've recently gotten into that. That's the new coffee now. Since I went to tea wasn't really waking me up that much, and now I went to just straight up raw espresso from the machine. So that's actually pretty good.
and so with that, we addressed that fairly well. Also, Matthew, you were talking about Geiger counters earlier, and you remember how I was saying, hey, dude, you ought to try and find civil defense surplus, to get because it looks really cool, just like as collectibles. So I actually found the website where that is, and I'll show it to all of y'all here on stream. Here are some of the fallout shelter signs. You can see a Geiger counter from the civil defense. Everything's painted in like this high visibility yellow with the civil defense stuff on the side. It's actually really cool looking. I mean, it's actually.
I've got the like a legit like DoD vintage sign, the real deal, like a surplus right now. The Fallout Shelter sign, that one right there. That's the actual one I got.
That's pretty cool. This one right here.
Yeah, that's it. It was that one.
Man, I gotta say, I find this stuff really neat, to be quite honest with y'all. And I hate that. Look at this. This is a radiation detection kit. It even comes with a little box and everything. Man, it's sold out. Like, why in the world do they have to sell out the cool stuff? And also, look at this little radiological demonstration unit. That thing's a little pricey though, $300 for something that probably doesn't work, but that's still pretty cool. But well, all of this doesn't work in reality. I mean, it's all from like the 60s. So the chances of any of it working isn't that great. But still, I find this stuff really neat. And also, the Fallout Shelter sign is pretty cool as well. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and thank you so much once again for support, JMP Traveler, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for giving a shout out to all the moms out there. Huge shout out to all the moms, because we know that they all care for their kids as much as Enforcer Mama does. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And something else, when you showed that Fallout Shelter sign, I saw several people say, wait a minute, how much? Where do you find that? How much? And the light bulb went ding in my head. If we created a replica of that, a metal like sign replica for the wall, just like the actual real deal, but put Enforcer Shelter on it with a similar styling, that would be pretty sick. And then also put like a very, very thin, like opaque Enforcer, sort of like shadowed in the background.
That would be really cool. Yeah. Or we could put, because, like the Fallout signs at the bottom, it says something like property of the Civil Defense Administration or something like that. We could put something like the property of the Lee Spring Army Nuclear Association or Administration or something like that. No, better yet, Lee Spring Army Nuclear Response Agency or something like that. That would be pretty cool. So we could put that at the bottom to parody it. But
that'd be pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie, that would be sick. I don't know where I'm gonna find a machinist to actually like make the metal signs like that, because I think they really have to be metal to be looking authentic. But I can find it. Like I've found so many suppliers I would have never thought that I could have found before, that were really good quality, by the way. Then we can probably find that one. It'll probably be a future merch run, by the way.
And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Fairly well indeed. And thank you everyone so much once again for being invested in that idea. I like to see it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Lex Hoa. How do you say their name, by the way? I don't want to butcher it. I'm going to feel bad if I butcher it.
One second.
Let's see, it's Lex Hoaloa. Is that it?
Lex Holaloha. Let's see, Lex Holaloha. So I think it's Holaloa. I think.
Okay. I think we're butchering Lex's last name, but thank you very much, Lex, for the $10 support. And he says, "Help Juz a little ease the short stream. Thanks, Enforcers."
And no problem at all. We are very happy to run the show. I love this show. I love the channel. I love the Lee Spring Army. I love everything about this. And I could not choose to be anywhere else rather than here. I hate that I feel bad, though, and I hate that I'm trying to round this thing out a little quickly tonight. But still, thank you massively, Lex, once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you help to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Fishing and Kayaking, who puts in a 5, and says, the Slovakian Prime Minister shot, the Italian Defense Minister in hospital, and another Russian general arrested, and who's next? And also don't forget about all the firings as well, Shoigu and all that stuff. It seems like a lot of mix-ups happening here. The only thing that confuses me a little bit, though, is the case of the Slovakian Prime Minister, because that guy was actually pro-Russian leaning. So it makes no sense for why someone would have gone and tried to get him that would have been aligned with a pro-Russian group. I really don't understand that. That's an interesting one to me, but the rest of them definitely suspicious. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say who's next is probably Matthew and me, because the amount of death threats we've been getting recently has been unreal. It's like dang, wow, we were really hitting it. But hey, the great thing is that we always have the Leaf Spring Army Secret Police working in the background to make sure that these people are doing their thing and being stupid away from us. But beyond that,
we keep the eye on the back rooms and put them in the cooler.
oh yeah, we throw some in Sakula, but we keep an eye on them all. I'll be honest with y'all, I'll be frank with y'all for a minute, because I threw out that joke and a lot of y'all are probably about to be concerned. We have an eye on every single person that either looks like they're about to make a threat or has made a threat. We know where they are at all times. We know what they're doing at all times. So if they ever get close to us, we have a really good idea. And so that's something that we always want to let y'all know, is that it would be pretty hard for anything like that to actually carry through. And on top of that, some of these people are just absolutely mentally deranged, and that is what it is. And a lot of people are gonna be like, "Wow, that's like scary." Nah, it's not. Like, honestly, we've been dealing with this for about 2 years, over 2 years at this point, and so it's not even scary for us anymore. It's just a fact of life. But you do notice when they start coming in larger numbers, you're like, "Huh, apparently we're really getting popular out there." And then, you have other people who want to sit there, and try and carry it on, or at least encourage it a little bit, like Hot Dog Man and Hot Dog Man's goons, and Hot Dog Man's other channels that suck up to him, like that weirdo guy who rides around in an ambulance and acts like a philosopher sitting on cinder blocks everywhere. But I
had a guy tell me yesterday that he was going to come to my house and end me. I had somebody tell me that yesterday.
And that Matthew was going to be first. He actually specifically said he's first.
He said, I'm like, what? Man, I'm catching strays out here. He said, you're first. I said, you're going to end me? I said, what do you mean you're going to end me? He said, you know what I mean? I'm going to end you. I said, well, okay, then. Well, when are you coming by? I said, hey, can you set up a time at least? Like, just let me know when you're coming by. I'd love to have you, It's the great state of Alabama. We love home intruders here. Like, home intruders in the state of Alabama, it's just something that you hear so often about. That doesn't happen very often in Alabama. I wonder why.
And there are these crazy, I mean, absolutely insane, especially to this guy, considering he's from New Zealand and the self-defense laws are completely different down there. And also the gun laws are completely different down there as well. Two big things to note. But here in Alabama, we have these amazing legal doctrines called Stand Your Ground and Castle Doctrine. And they're just incredible, because it means, one, if someone charges you or tries to attack you, you don't have to run. Like, you're not legally obligated to run. You can just stand there and hold your ground against this person. Or if they break into your house, whatever happens, happens. Like the law is like, if someone gets in your house, whatever happens inside of your house it will happen. Like, and the law will not care. So yeah, we are always very happy about the state of the laws in this beautiful state of Alabama, because they allow you a great deal of leeway when dealing with crazy people. Crazy people in general, whether crazy people against this channel or just crazy people in general. So gotta say,
in reality though, like I see people saying that's horrible, and it is horrible. Like, to know people are that depraved to go and make death threats over stuff said on the internet, it's insanity, really. But the reality of it is, we've started to sort of like get used to it, sadly, because we've gotten so many over time, and so many people were saying they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do this. You realize over time, it's keyboard warriors. The people that are actually dangerous, they don't talk too much about what they're going to do. They simply do it. The people that are yapping and running their mouths like a clown, those are the people that really don't intend on doing anything, but they want to feel tough while they're behind their keyboard. Say some things, I'm going to end you. But it's like, once you confront them, like, for example, the guy that said that to me, I found everything about the guy and sent him pictures of his house and also where he lives, and he decided to shut his mouth because he realized, oh, shit, like, I think the police might actually come to my house now, which they probably will, but he deserves it. But yeah, that's what happens. Like, just a bunch of keyboard warriors running their mouth.
And that's another thing too, and I don't know if these people know this or not, but anyone who says anything that starts getting into threatening territory about this channel, and I'm not kidding when we say this, we do have pretty much a small group of secret police who work with us in the background on this channel to find these people, everything about them. And so anyone who ever makes a threat about this channel, we know literally everything about them. So if they ever tried to follow through on the threat, we're immediately contacting authorities because we know exactly where they are, where they live, what they drive in, if they even have a car, everything about them, who their family members are, so that way we can make sure that if anything needs to happen legally, we can find ways to serve them. Everything, every avenue is taken care of. And that's one thing I never get about the people who issue death threats. Is that it's not like we don't know who you are. Your anonymity disappears as soon as you start to even insinuate that there is a threat, because everyone gets on top of it, everyone gets to work, everything's found out about these people. So I don't know why people do it. It's not like they're invisible either. And on top of that, like that guy, like that specific guy you were talking about, Matthew, who's like, you're first. The guy, we're not going to get into too much specifics because, of course, doxing isn't a thing that we're a big fan of, even if people are issuing death threats. But the South Island is really not a great place to be issuing death threats from. Like, it's like you're the farthest away from the United States you ever could be. It would take like a 19-hour airplane flight to even get here. So what in the world are you talking about? Like, that is like the safest position to issue a threat, because the chances of them following out on it, just due to the cost of an airplane ticket and also the flight time, is pretty ludicrous. But with that, I hope that doesn't.
Isn't that funny though? Like, it's wild because with the right skills, and I will say I'm an amateur at it. I'm not trying to brag or anything like that. I'm an amateur OSINT person, but I know people that are experts at it. So if somebody's really threatening, really bad, I'll just contact my people and they'll go find it for me. And they're happy to do it as well, because they know that we're getting death threats, and they're like, well, wait a minute, who is this? Let's examine the person and see if it's actually legit. And we find them out. Just like that guy right there who made that death threat. He thought he was anonymous. He went through a lot of trouble to hide his identity, but we found out exactly where he's at in New Zealand. So also he's all the way around the world. So it's like, that's going to be a long flight, buddy. Like, you're really dedicated. If you're willing to fly to the United States and come here, like that's a long way to go to end up with a bad result. That's a long way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the people are truly ridiculous. That's just one of them. I mean, there's been at least several, but back in the day, and people get creative with that stuff. Not to sit here and talk about it too much, but to give you all some of the examples, because usually we just completely ignore the stuff. Well, we know it's happening. We're of course involved in it because we have to see what they're saying, but then we move on. Back in the day when the channel first started, people actually used to email me. Like, it wasn't Matthew at that point, it was me. And I would see these emails and they'd be like, you live at such and such address, I'm going to come there and I'm going to like shoot your dogs first, and then I'm going to shoot your parents and make you watch, and then I'm going to kill you. And it's like, are y'all like people are like actually sick like that? Like, and that's something that I found out really quickly, is that there are just crazy people out there. But then as time has gone on, and to be honest, it kind of died down from like just random crazy people saying stuff like that. It kind of died down. But then when Hot Dog Man got involved, then it started to take on an organized level. And that's something very interesting I find about these other YouTubers that side with the Hot Dog Man, is that all of them kind of really spur their communities to try and issue death threats to us, and not to, try and play the victim or anything here or anything like that, because it doesn't matter. Like, these people are probably never going to follow through on it. But these YouTubers that do this kind of stuff, including some, I don't know, say hot dog salesman, some ambulance guy who wanders around Ukraine a little bit, and then maybe another one, but he's kind of on the fence, so we're keeping an eye on him. But all of them who say these things, the only thing that they do, I mean, they don't do anything to impact us, but the only thing that they really do is just end up getting more crazy people to try and threaten to kill us, and that's about it. And so, it's like, I just don't know what in the world can be done about that. You would think that eventually people would look into these people in particular that are pretty much sponsoring groups of terrorism, and not only that, they end up harassing some of y'all in the live chat, from what we've heard here and there, and nothing is ever done about it, which is just incredibly annoying, but it's something that we have to live with. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Nate R, who puts in a 5 and says, sending all the love from Maine. And you guys are the best, and keep doing what you're doing. And question to the folks, please.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, all the way from Maine, a really cool state. And one day I want to go up there and I want to have the crab bisque. Like, I don't care if the crab biscuit is the same down here. For some reason, I want it from Maine. I've heard so much about it, and I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much for the kind words as well. It does mean a lot. And of course, your support is helping us to make this thing a reality. And so with that, Matthew, what is the live chat?
All right. And also, by the way, Mark Hoover said, please tell me this nutter's not from Christchurch, New Zealand. Not Christchurch, but I won't get any more specific than that. But he's around the South Island area. So he's not near you. Don't worry about it. You're not going to get mixed up in anything like that. But anyways, moving into our live chat question here. This one goes to Portstan, who says, any update on what the Russian free fighters are doing these days?
They're currently involved in the defense of the Kharkiv Oblast around the cities of Vovchansk and also near the village of Hliboke and Lipsy and Zelenskyy at the moment. That's what we know, and that's about the best I can give right now because that's their last reported locations according to video and picture evidence. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well. Thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to James Dunn, LSA, Brigadier General, who puts in a 5 and says ICBM can be intercepted with THAAD and one of the systems that I for the name of. And James Dunn, did you know that that system, I believe, only has a 50% success rate, I believe. Am I correct on that, Enforcer?
I would have to check. It would be weird that we're replacing the Patriot, which has like a 99%, well, a 99.7% success rate with something that would only have a 50-50 chance. But let me make sure to check.
I thought THAAD was our domestic system for like shooting down ICBMs.
The THAAD is actually made to replace the Patriots in service.
Let me see something here. Let me do some fact checking on my own statements. Let's see. THAAD success rate.
Let's see here.
So it says here the THAAD interceptor has a 100% success rate, but let's see here. Let's see. Now, I'm going to tell you where I got that statement from. I'd watched a documentary on the U.S. defenses to ICBM attacks, like nuclear missile attacks. And the main system that guarded the United States only ended up having about a 50% or so success rate on actually shooting the missiles down coming in. That's what I've heard.
I know what they're saying now. It's a 50% success of intercepting intercontinental ballistic missiles, but it has a 100% success rate in intercepting conventional weapon systems like intermediate or short-range ballistic missiles.
Oh,
so that's
okay,
what
that
that's
makes
saying. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So to answer that question, the THAAD can intercept all air targets, 100% of them. But with intercontinentals, you are right, and I'm actually wrong there, and thank you for correcting me on that. It can intercept ICBMs, it's just that it can't intercept all of them. It'll be about half of them, and the other half will get through. But that still is reducing the damage to the United States by 50% if we were able to intercept half of all intercontinental ballistic missiles flying in. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I actually did not know that the THAAD could do that. I know that the Arrow 2 system in Israel possibly could do something like that, because we did see the first exo-atmospheric interception occurring during Iran's attack on Israel a while ago, but I did not know that the THAAD could do that as well. That's actually incredibly interesting. I thank you so much for sharing that with me and correcting a false statement that I made earlier, because it does appear that intercontinental ballistic missiles nowadays may actually be able to be intercepted, at least with a 50-50 chance. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
In our next one goes to Chonky Cat, who puts in a 5 and says, why doesn't Ukraine arm all squads with shotguns, and wouldn't it be effective against drones, and is birdshot enough, buckshot? And please elaborate. Thanks.
And thank you so much for the support. And this is actually a great question, because I'll have you know, your question actually circles back all the way back in the day, at least a year or a little bit more than a year ago. I was the first person, I think, in the world. I'm not even kidding. Matthew could back this up because he was here. I was the first person in the world who was watching a drone flying around on the camera. And I was like, you know, wouldn't it be just easy to get a shotgun and shoot this thing down rather than like a anti-drone jammer? I mean, I was like, wouldn't that just be easier for everyone? And so then after that, I think it was like 2 months later, we saw the first clip of someone using a shotgun in Ukraine to shoot a drone down. And it was from the Ukrainian side. And from then on, a lot of people have been talking about that far more heavily. I don't know if I was the first one to get that idea or if everyone started to get that idea at the exact same time. I'm not really sure on that. But still, that question circles all the way back around. I don't know why they don't equip one person in each squad with a shotgun. It doesn't really make a lot of sense not to, considering that they equip some of them with anti-drone guns, and from what we understand, anti-drone guns are less effective than a shotgun would be. They have a decent percentage of failure. So going off of that, I don't know why they don't. I would say that birdshot probably would be enough to take down a drone, because birdshot hitting the propellers of a drone would probably rip them off or shear them off, and that alone would probably take the drone down. Buckshot could do it. It's just that with buckshot, you get less pellets. They're like double odd size pellets. But the thing is that they're larger, there's less of them, so you don't really get the kind of spread of damage that you would get with birdshot. Birdshot is like BB size pellets that are all being thrown out, hundreds of them into the air, into a finer or more narrow spread than you would think, but you would still obliterate a drone if even a bit of that hit one of the propellers. It would probably end up going down. So I would say that birdshot is probably enough, at least in my opinion. But one thing that I was thinking about a long time ago, although this would take a decent amount of money to do, and that's kind of a little bit of an issue, is to get several drones, like several cheaper drones, and then just fly them in front of us with shotguns and shoot at them with birdshot and buckshot at like different ranges, like maybe 50 yards away and then 20 yards away, to see if that actually is an effective principle or not, and what would be better, buckshot or birdshot, in trying to shoot those down. We would have to find a place where we could shoot buckshot into the sky, because buckshot travels a bit further than birdshot would. As far as doing that, it would cost a lot of money too, because doing it with buckshot and birdshot at different ranges, you'd at least have to shoot at 4 different drones. And so you would have to have 4 separate drones, which could end up being a really pricey video to try and do that. But I still think it would be very interesting to see if that would be effective at all or not. But still, I hope that does answer that question well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to the Badger Bro, who puts in a 5 and says, Enforcer,
Hey!
The West has expectations of success for Ukraine, but I would argue that China has higher expectations of success for Russia.
I would say maybe that's possible, but the thing is that the Chinese didn't really seem to be that warm to the Russians on their recent, I guess you could say, diplomatic meeting inside of China. It didn't really seem like anyone was a big fan of the Russians there, and so maybe the Chinese really don't care if the Russians will end up winning or losing the war, because either way, the Russians have now been severely economically tied to the Chinese because of the war, whether they win or lose, and so that may be all the Chinese actually care about. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because folks like you help to make it possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jason Curling, who puts in a 5 and says, Do you think that Ukraine do land invasion now in Crimea? And no, hold on a second. Let me see. There's some grammar errors in here. Let me see if I can try to dissect it. He said, do you think that Ukraine will do a land invasion in Crimea now that there's no Russian Navy?
I don't think so, because at the moment it's a little bit difficult to even get to Crimea. Right now, Ukrainian forces are fighting in the Dnipro marshes and also up to the area of Rabotne. So it would still be a really long distance to make it down to Crimea. So for the moment, I would say no. They would have to make it through Kherson and Zaporizhia first to even make it to Kherson. So I'd say the chances of that are probably unlikely. But I still thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Aaron LSA, who puts in a 5 and says, get a water, sweet tea, or mango body armor juice on me. And stay away from the coffee, LOL.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for wanting me to get some drinks, because I really do need some drinks, and I think I'm gonna really take a good lie down after this stream, and also probably go pee, because I'll tell you, drinking 2 cups of water and a body armor in stream, it really makes the bladder work hard, you know what I mean? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, David Ruff said, did you really just call out the grammatical errors of someone who gave you money? I had to, David. I had to. No disrespect to Jason whatsoever, but I have to, because it sounds like I'm having a stroke over here when I'm reading it. And I'm trying to make sure it's clear. Like, I'm not sitting over here, like, goofing off or not paying attention. And I was trying to dissect what it said. But, of course, Autocorrect gets a little out of hand sometimes, so I understand why. But once again, that's why. But with that, we're moving into our next super chat, and this one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a 5 and says, "I'd like to know how many Russian submarines are remaining."
From what we know, I think there's 4 of them that are remaining at this point. I think there was like 5 of them at the onset of the war, but now there's 4 because the Rostov-on-Don was destroyed in dry dock. The chances of that being repaired soon or at all is probably unlikely, from what I know. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian Woodhouse, who puts in a 4 and says, "Russian warship effed itself."
And it did. It really did. The Cyclone ripped itself apart, I suppose. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to James Dunn, LSA Brigadier General, who puts in a 2 and says, "Oh, SM-3 can also take out an ICBM mid-flight."
Oh, and thank you for the support and sharing that. And let's see, the SM-3. Let me go pull that up. Anti-ballistic missile system. Let's see, this is a ship-based surface-to-air missile used by the United States Navy. Really cool. What ships is this used on? Let's see here. What ships is this on? Let's see here. It's not going to tell me. Come on. Come on. Let's see here. This is, oh, Ticonderoga. That would make sense. That would make sense, wouldn't it? The Ticonderoga class missile cruiser. That makes lots of sense because the ship would be large enough to carry that. So, with that, I thank you for the support and I thank you for clarifying that. And that is really cool to know that we have a system like that. And we can also see it on the USS Decatur. Wait a minute, that's an Arleigh Burke. Huh. So I guess this can be on any ship. Cool. I'll actually like that. Mass respect because I love the Arleigh Burke class destroyers. But anyways, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a 2 and says, "Thank you for your hard work. You two are awesome. Proud to be LSA and heart."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. We are proud to have you as LSA. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, that is our last super chat question of the night. So a huge shout out to everyone once again for supporting our work and the channel. And we're now moving on to our live chat questions. And our first one is going to go to O-Tubes, who says, "Did you hear the news of Russia conducting nuclear drills in southern Russia close to Crimea? And what do you really think?"
I did hear about that. I think it is a provocative measure to either provoke fear in the West or to try and draw them into maybe supporting Ukraine less. Those would be the things I take from it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on. And also, really quickly, everyone, I got to thank everyone for hanging out here with us tonight and listening to the news. But to be quite honest, even after drinking a lot of water and a lot of body armor, I still don't really feel that hot. And I would want to answer a lot of live chat questions, but to be quite honest, I kind of want to get off air and just kind of lay down on the floor a little bit. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Booyah, who says the original 150,000 Russian troop exercise was actually a deployment. And this latest tactical nuke exercise is maybe a deployment, or is it really not?
I have a feeling it's really not, because the use of tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine would be unbelievably severe, and the use of tactical nuclear weapons against forces in Europe and NATO would be unbelievable. And so I'm doubting that it is the case that they would use tactical nuclear weapons. I'm usually on the side of believing that the worst won't happen, at least on a level like this, but it's not out of the question. That's kind of the part that provokes fear, is what if this isn't a drill? What if this is the real deal? But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Mark Hooper, who says, "Are the Russians looking to do what they did in World War II and move their military factories over the Urals to avoid drones?"
They might end up doing that, but the thing is that the Russians don't have the money or the economic motivators to be able to do something like that in the present day. They are pretty much stuck where they are right now because Russia is so poor. It would be pretty much impossible to relocate all of these factories and then account for that expenditure. So, to be quite honest, they probably would want to do that. The problem is they wouldn't be able to afford doing that at any point in the war right now, certainly right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Fred Zersal, who says, what do you think about the U.S. releasing another 1 million barrels from the gas reserves to keep down the gas prices?
I can't really answer that one too much because really, like, as soon as I heard that, like, the bells went off. I was like, that would honestly be a bit of a political answer. So sadly, I can't really answer that too well, and it kind of falls into the domestic politics category. I know it doesn't seem like it, but if I gave an answer to that, it actually would, and it's really the only answer that there is. But with that, and also Philip Fix's LSA put in a 2 and said, and who is the lucky last person? And that apparently is you, because you threw in the last super chat. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Philip Fixes LSA, and helping this channel to keep on running. You are the lucky last person of the night, I suppose. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. Once again, I don't mean to sound like I'm just groveling. I do not mean to grovel, but I'm still incredibly sorry that this stream had to be very short tonight. I'm not feeling that hot. I hope everyone does understand, and I thank everyone so much for their compassion and kindness in the live chat about that. I usually do not want to make it a routine of complaining about my own personal state on the stream, but I thank everyone for understanding, and I thank everyone for getting that the stream will sadly have to end a little bit early tonight for that. If y'all did enjoy, however, usually streams actually run for quite a long time and are incredibly fun, filled with jokes, and not only that, filled with a lot of informative news. And so, if y'all did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because we are here 6 days a week, every single night at the exact same time, except for Mondays, running this show. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. And once again, thank you for bearing with us tonight. A little bit of a rough spot here and there, but it happens from time to time. And thank you all for bearing with us. And with that, we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for our nightly war news stream, and also midday, hopefully, as well, if there's enough news to cover for our short war summary. And with that, thank you all for the support tonight, and Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and good night.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.